12. Okay, so in light of the fact that our lives are short and we die off, so teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Guys, think about this. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. I don't know if I've lived half of my life that I'm going to have. We don't know a single day ahead. People die when they're in their 20s. People die when they're kids. Tragically, that happens too. In their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and on. We don't know how many days we have. And this verse 12, teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. We went through Proverbs about wisdom in life. And in the very Proverbs, you have that verse that says, do not boast about tomorrow, for you don't know what a day may bring forth. One of the parts of wisdom is knowing that the time is short and not wasting your life. John Piper, he has a well-known book, Don't Waste Your Life. And the thing is, if you don't have God, if you don't know the meaning of life, if you don't know the Creator, there is no distinction between life that is wasted and life that is not wasted. Because what's the basis? What is the purpose of life? You can't even establish there being a waste of life or not waste of life, because if you believe you're a random product of stardust that by chance mutated and you happen to be here by accident, there's no wasting. You're just a bag of stardust. But when you know God, when you know the actual purpose and meaning of life, now you have the basis for a life that is wasted versus a life that was not wasted. So the key thing is, what is the purpose of life? Understanding why you even live, why you're here. And of course, only when we know God, we know the meaning of life and what the purpose of life is. So the one life you have, you want to make sure you know correctly what life is about and not waste it. I mean, that's why John Piper wrote that book, Don't Waste Your Life. I think it sold millions. And it goes into that very issue. The one life you have, how are you going to live it? What is it about? And us who are in the new covenant, we know that it's about the Lord Jesus and the gospel, the good news of Him, and the glory of God. So we want to spend our lives for that thing. I don't think I was really thinking about this Psalm 90, but just a couple days ago, 2-3 days ago, like I was kind of praying. I was just before bed, I was just kind of thinking, and this quote came to my mind, and I recorded it. But it's if your life was not lived for the purpose it was intended for, your life was wasted. So if your life was not lived for the purpose it was intended for, your life was wasted. I'm glad I just got that down. And yeah. So teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And then, return, O Lord, how long will it be? And have compassion on your servants. O satisfy us in the morning with your hesed, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. So it starts kind of slightly shifting a little bit. So, there are a lot of verses here. I know a lot of modern day churches would not like going to this psalm because it goes into God's wrath and us going back to the dust and things like that. And that God is not the loving God that they have. So they may not like going into the psalm, but there's a little shift that happens here, kind of. So it says, have compassion on your servants. And then 14, oh, satisfy us in the morning with your hesed, your loving kindness, your loyal love. So it starts going into kind of the purpose of life, the fact that God is loving kindness, experiencing Him, being loved by Him, is such a huge thing, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. So that makes there be meaning of life and living according to the reason you're created. 15, make us glad according to the days in which you have afflicted us. So I know there are a lot of these direct God being the subject, you have afflicted us, or like verse 9, all our days have passed away in your wrath. And then like verse 7, we have been consumed by your anger, and by your wrath we are terrified. Verse 8, you have set our iniquities before you. All these verses. In 15, you have afflicted us. This is it's pretty direct, and God as the subject that's like directly. So it does speak in this kind of way sometimes in the Bible because of God's sovereignty. But in this context, I'm not sure if Moses is speaking about like God's direct punishment, or he's talking about just based on the sovereignty of God. Okay, like, for example, remember when in Job, Satan is the one that's actually doing stuff, but then it's attributed to God, that God brought the affliction because of God's sovereignty. It might be like that. So just the fact that during our time on the earth, because God is sovereign, that there is this affliction and difficulty. But yeah, make us glad according to the days in which you have afflicted us, the years in which we have seen evil. Let your work appear to your servants. Okay, this is where, again, meaning of life comes in. Let your work appear to your servants, and your glory or your majesty to your children. So, God, your work, see, here's the reality. The whole reason for the universe, the whole reason for this world, the purpose is God's display of God's work. The purpose is God's work, what he wants to do for his glory. And so Moses is asking, let your work appear to your servants. Let it appear, let it be known to us, and reveal your glory, your majesty to your children, and let the favor of Yahweh our God be upon us. God's favor, let it be upon us. Oh, how huge that is. See, God is the center of everything. You saw in verse in 13, it says God having compassion on us, and then 14, satisfy us in the morning with your hesed, and then verse 16, let your work appear to your servants and your glory to your children, and then 17, let the favor of Yahweh be upon us. So God's work, God's favor, God's loving kindness. The truth is, if you don't know God, you're lost, and you don't know the meaning of life, and it's just empty, and it's a waste. Without the Creator, you can make up your own meaning of life, but you don't have the actual reason why you exist. When you make a hammer, the hammer didn't create itself. Someone else, some other thing, a human being, made the hammer for a purpose, for it to be used for something. The hammer didn't determine its own existence, the purpose, the meaning. And so for the hammer, if it thinks, I don't know why I exist, because let's just say the hammer doesn't know the Creator. I don't know why I look the way I do. I don't know why I exist. And then it goes around like, just doing, living for a purpose it wasn't intended for. Like, just doing some jumping around and rolling around and just wasting life. It's wasted. That's how most people live, not knowing why they're here. pursuing whatever stuff. But yeah, like we see in this psalm, knowing God, His work, His loving kindness, His favor, and establish the work of our hands for us. Oh, this is huge. The last two lines is, oh God, establish the work of our hands for us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. God, let our works, let our actions, let our works count for something. Please establish it. Think about that. See, God created a world where our choices, our actions, our lives can have real meaning, can have a real purpose. It can count for eternal purposes, God's purposes. So after going through all this thing, at the end, Moses makes the point, oh God, establish the work of our hands. Let our lives, our actions, our works be counted before you. That is the prayers of the saints. The one life you have, is it going to be spent for what it was intended for? Or is it going to be wasted, like most people? It's only one life. I mean, this is huge. All human beings that exist only have one life. And then it's eternity. Think about how huge that is. How can you emphasize, how can you, you can't go too far in the emphasis of how serious this is. You can't exaggerate on this. The one life you have, you don't have any more. No, you're not reincarnated as a pig or whatever else, or a flower or insect. No, that's baloney. It's funny, I like that, but it's baloney. It's one life, it's over, and eternity is going to start. So how will your life be spent? How will it be used? The only way it's actually spent well, where it counts, where it had true meaning, is when it's used for God, for the glory of God, for His will. So, that's the purpose that we have as God's people that know Him. And in our sphere, or in our context, in our dispensation, this time period, as New Covenant saints, I go over all the time what our lives are about, what we're here for. And when I was going through Proverbs, I went into how all the words that we speak, think about how at the end of your days, all the words that came out of my mouth, what kind of effect it had, what kind of positive effect it had. Or you can expand it to your life, your actions, how you lived your life. Did it count for what it was intended for?